Can you hear me at the back? I didn't hear you. Can you hear me at the back? I don't think you've got your mics turned on. You're very, very quiet at the back. Thank you. It's always good to start a technology conference with technology that doesn't work. That's always kind of cool. So we're definitely in the right place. It's great to be here in Mumbai. I'm not a stranger to India. I don't spend a lot of time here, but twice a year I'm in Delhi and Bangalore. I work with a few organizations on looking at their strategy and the technology they use. So NASMA's group, the whole NASMA's group, I work with the executive team there, looking at hiring and strategy and technology. I've worked with Cisco here and Oracle. So I'm familiar with some of what you do. Also, the research that I've just recently completed, we surveyed and looked at the candidate journey of 9 million candidates across 15 organizations across a global study. It included about 4 million candidates from India in particular. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, although it's global, has a very local impact in terms of what's going on. So this is me. My name's Bill Boorman. My background is I'm a recovering recruiter. And it's been about 10 years since my last hire. I take it day by day. And somehow I'm managing to stay strong. The work that I do is with global organizations, BBC, Oracle, NASMA's, on strategy and methodology. Anyone who's ever done any training with social talent, has anyone done any social? Right, so at least one of you, you will have seen my video about pub stories. I have about 55 short 3-minute videos on the social talent platform, which is recruiter training. I also work with startups, so about 9 startups on product and market position. And I do a lot of research. I fill in a lot of time on research, looking at a lot of products, and just really trying to figure out how can we make recruiting better, which is a very, very simple practice, because when I look at how we hire people and whether it works or whether it's broken and whether technology has made us better or made us worse, I'm in a fortunate position, I think, in that I can remember the past. I still just about have my marbles, but I've been around long enough to remember the past. Who in this room remembers having a fax machine in the office? A fax machine which you used in work. So it's about 70% of you. And that's kind of a really important metric. That's the most important metric for me when I look at it and say, if you can remember a fax machine, you're a digital immigrant. And if you don't remember what a fax machine is, you're a digital native. You were born with this stuff. But for most of us, the digital journey is constantly evolving. We're constantly having to learn about new devices, new technology. And we have a lot of assumptions. We go to a lot of conferences, we listen to a lot of people, we make a lot of assumptions about what we believe is correct in the market. So we conducted this research across 9 million candidates to test a lot of assumptions to say, is what we're talking about, what we're building our strategies on, actually true? Does this apply today, or has the market changed? So I'm going to share with you some of the ways in which the market's changed, which actually says most of what we think is right is actually wrong. And we can back that up with data. So that's some of what I'm going to talk to you about. It is a data story. It is exactly this. It's a data story. It's a story based on numbers. There's truth in it. Very simple. People ask me quite often. I was on a panel 2 weeks ago. Somebody else said to me, we talk a lot about data. What is big data other than it's large? And the simplest way I can explain it when we look at data in the way we make our decisions and determine our strategy is big data is turning numbers into pictures so idiots can understand it. And that's really what we're trying to do. Build pictures so we understand the story of what is happening in our organizations. And this is why. This is the places that we work are not agile. We will go to lots of conferences and hear lots of talent acquisition teams, recruiters, HR teams, talking about how their organisations are having to become agile, to work in an agile way. Organisations are not agile. We still hire in a way which is based on the 20th century. We still operate 20th century hiring methods. For example, we still hire based on history, because in the past, history was a good predictor of performance. If you worked for a similar company, you did a job for 3 or 4 years, and you turned up every day and you didn't get fired, if we hired you, that was probably a good indicator. So we built a hiring funnel to deal with the volume. We built what we called a hiring funnel. And this is the hiring funnel that we've built. There's 2 important aspects about it that you have to think about. The first one is we've based hiring on Game of Thrones. When we look at the technology, what do I mean by we've built our hiring based on Game of Thrones? We've made our hiring and our application process so painful that the successful candidate at the end of the process is never the best candidate, but the last one alive. The one who managed to battle the dragons and do all the unnecessary stuff. You can clap if you like, I don't mind. Or you can heckle if you disagree. But that's what we've done. The other thing we've done, which is really interesting, is we've designed a recruiting funnel to do this. We've set up a process of 2 people lying to each other at every possible stage. And if one doesn't find out the other in that process, somebody gets hired by accident at the end of it. That is how we've built our hiring process, right? And we've got to look at it and say, why do we do this stuff? Why are we doing this? Why are we making the connection of people with jobs painful whilst going, oh, we have a war for talent. We need to spend some more money on our employer brand, on our technology and all this stuff. When actually, if we just said, you know what? Who should we get to design our hiring process? Who should we get in to design what our funnel should look like? You should do what I do. We should get some 12-year-olds in and say, what do you think work should look like? How can we make, what should it look like? What should happen when you want a job? What sort of questions should we ask? What kind of crazy questions do we ask when we're talking to graduates or students? And my son was on a panel recently. I was very proud of him. He's 17. He gave a very good answer, which I think sums this up. And he said that when he went for his very first interview, he was asked a question, which was, why do you want this job? Why do you want this job? And he suggested that the answer he gave probably wasn't the right one, but was probably the only truthful answer they got all day, which is, I live in a capitalist society, I've got to pay the bills, so I need someone to pay me. Because hiring and the way we position our companies, the way we need to understand this is, I think hiring, applying for jobs, the way candidates work now in an agile environment, and the way we need to position ourselves around that is a lot like voting. I know you've just had an election. I don't want to get into that because I've heard it can get a bit lively, but and interesting. We've had our own elections, by the way, also interesting. Have a few beers tonight, I'll tell you all about it. But why do I think applying for a job is like voting? It's like this. It's like this. Anyone who loves their job and their company is kind of weird. I don't want to, people who love work are strange, right? They're not people I want to hang out with and work with every day. Because for most people, it's a case of, I've got to get a check somewhere. So where is the least painful place I can go to work every day? How do you position yourself as that? Not we're the most fantastic, the most sensational, but we're okay. We're actually better than the other one. The other people who do what we do. Bring your skills here. I used to describe myself when I was an HR director as being a prison warder. That's how I described my job. That my role and my responsibility was to imprison 750 people at work between the hours of 9 and 6 and make sure they didn't break any rules. That was my general role in HR, which included a lot of recruiting. So I think we need to change that and say, why is this? And a lot of this is because the organisations we work for are super tankers. This is what we've learned from this digital exploration. What I mean by super tankers is if you want to change something, you want to change a technology or a career site or a method, you probably have to ask 7 levels of permission, finishing with Voldemort before you change the font on your website. That's not agile behaviour. But people, well, people are agile because people don't operate in the same way. If they wake up tomorrow and think, okay, I'm not going to consume content by video, I'm now going to read blogs or listen to podcasts, or I'm not going to use Twitter, I'm now going to use Facebook or Snapchat or whatever it is. They don't have to go and ask anyone permission apart from themselves. They just do it. And once they start doing it, we get word of mouth. The word of mouth is the way in which people move. They shift very quickly. Very quickly they go, where do my friends hang out? I'm going to start going there. It's kind of like if you have a bar or a pub or a restaurant or a club, that everybody likes it for a while. And then when it gets really popular, people say it's not cool to do that anymore. I'm going to do something else. And that's what people do. They're agile. So as organisations, we're usually running 2 years behind the people. So just as we start figuring out that we need a strong employer brand, and we build our career sites to reflect that, and we go, we need an EVP, an employee value proposition. We get that. We need these statements. The behaviour of the candidates and their digital journey tells us we're not really interested in that anymore. That was old news. So where are they? Where is this word of mouth? The first thing, and this is something I love, is I look at most career sites, most of the way in which we're selling opportunities, India and anywhere really, and what I see is employer bland, not employer brand. If I take the name off the way you are positioning yourself, it's very difficult for me to find the difference between one company and another. Very difficult for me to make a choice. And excuse me, the candidates have recognised that. We're also positioning ourselves. What I mean by it's not about the clock is we still think retention is important, and it's not. Retention in an organisation is only a measure of how bad you are at firing people who can't do their jobs, generally speaking. Somebody comes to me and says, we've fantastic retention, people stay here 7, 8, 9, 10 years. I actually say, you have my deepest sympathy. How do you get any innovation? How do you change anything? What's important in people now is not retention of employment. That's not what we're selecting, but retention of relationship. Because we will have candidates forever as long as we retain a relationship. Do they keep things we track? Do they keep opening our emails? Do they keep looking at our content? Do they still download our stuff? Do they still come to our events? Do they want to stay in touch? How strong is our alumni? So building up and thinking about retention of relationship over retention of employment changes the way we do things. This is what we're seeing as behaviours. This is what's important to candidates now. Job brand, not employer brand. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? When you track the behaviours of what candidates do, and this is what we did for 8 million candidates actually via their career sites, looking for the trends, and what we found is actually the behaviour was very different to what we thought it was going to be. We thought it was going to be all these young millennials and new people in the market and all that kind of thing. And what they were going to be doing was shopping for companies, not jobs. They were going to be comparing one employer brand for another, going to Glassdoor, doing all this kind of stuff. And what we discovered is, in the agile candidate world, they're not doing any of that. They're not looking at our EVP, they're not looking at our expensive video, they're not reading our content, not doing any of it. What they're doing is looking at our jobs. They're interested in jobs, not careers. Really important to say, the modern day job seeker, to me, has never been more focused on their career than ever before. They're not just not focused on their career with a company. That's not really important. What they're focused on is career for self. So they look at each job through the lens of, how will this job make me more employable in the future? Even to the point where the work I did with Bank of Ireland, we produced a career site which featured all the people who'd left the company. This is what they joined as, this is what they left as. So you come here, we're expecting you to stay. The average length of service globally, slightly longer in India, the average length of service with a company is 2.6 years. And it's dropping by about 4 months every year. So to think retention is important is kind of like trying to stop the tide. But what it tells us is when people come into our organisation, they are attracted by how employable we are going to make them when they've finished in 2 years' time. We have to look on everyone we're hiring as temporary, regardless of the contract. How do we attract, retain and keep relationships with people who come on a temporary basis and enable them to give their best performance when they come in? That means starting to think about, are we actually hiring for culture like we hear about, or are we hiring for skills? Do we need people to come in who can do a job who we can make better? So what do? This is what job seekers do. They apply for 8 times more jobs than they ever have done. Usually via job boards, career sites, or job alerts. So having regular job alerts that talk to the right people about the right opportunity, very targeted, gets you response. When they look at a career site, they're interested in 4 things. They want to go to a single landing job page. They're interested in a job, not a company. So they want to go direct to a job, and they want 4 pieces of information very clear on that page. The 4 pieces of information they want to make them apply is, number 1, the salary. The salary. They want to see the money. Money is very important because money makes them choose, is it worth, remember Game of Thrones, is it worth putting myself through the pain of applying or not? Money, location, disqualifiers, not qualifiers. They're not worried about these are the things that you need. Disqualifiers. The disqualifiers are those things are what will stop me from being successful if I apply. What's the hidden stuff? Frightening. When we look at the Candidate Experience Awards, biggest feedback we get, 2 things candidates complain about the most globally, about 80% of candidates. Number 1 is a black hole. I applied and never heard anything back. The system is designed not to communicate. Number 2, what else happens is either not hearing back and being lost, or getting no feedback, or having a painful process, something which took too long to apply when it was a waste of time. So if we look at that, we can change that process very simply when we look at job brand. So there was no point in me applying for this job because I was never going to get it. So what a candidate's doing is they're not expecting to hear back from you, and of the 9 million candidates, only 10% of those candidates progressed to the first level of anything, the first action in the hiring funnel. Only 10%. And that was across pretty much every level and every industry. While the volumes were different, the ratios were about the same. That was the thing that was kind of interesting. Only 10% went to the first stage. There was 7 different assessment stages in the hiring process, and 1 in 3 people got disqualified at every stage. So 1 in 3 progressed. So 2/3 were disqualified. What does that tell us? Number 1 is we're attracting all the wrong people. First of all, people are applying for jobs who are never going to get them with us. We're creating a bad experience. Why is that? Because we're not truthful in what we're doing. We're actually working on volume metrics. Let's just get more and more people rather than narrow volume. How do we get just a small number of people? That changes when we think about job brand. It's also what happens with candidates. So they're not looking at employer brands. So should we just go, okay, let's stop spending money on that stuff. Let's stop generating content. Let's stop telling stories. Let's stop doing the employer brand stuff, and let's concentrate on jobs and do job adverts, and that'll work. Except it doesn't. doesn't work. And this is where it fails, because the employer brand has moved. It's shifted. The employer brand is not in the attraction stage. It doesn't make people apply to you, but it makes them stay in the process. And this is a very interesting digital behavior that we saw, that because candidates are not expecting to hear back from you, because generally they don't, think about it, 90% of them do not progress to the first stage, therefore they get lost. The expectation is, I'm not going to invest a lot of time in applying for this job. I'm going to look at the headlines, tick the box, apply, and if I'm successful in that, I'm going to start getting interested. I don't want to spend a load of time looking at your job, because you're almost definitely not going to look at my CV anyway, even though I sent it to you. Because that's what I'm seeing, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm not hearing back from you. I'm not going to emotionally invest in thinking, I really hope, I could just imagine working for this company if I'm probably going to be disappointed. But the interesting thing that happens is the moment they get a first response at the top of the funnel, when the 10% who are asked to do something, where what they're asked to do is to do things like have a video interview, or come in for an assessment day, or come for a first interview, what do is, the first thing they do is they go all over your employer brand. They study everywhere. So this is an opportunity for us to say, what part of the employer brand is the candidate interested in? We track the digital journey in. What we do at the moment is provide all the information at the top of the funnel. Here's all the stuff about great stuff about our company. And once you've applied, we send you next to nothing apart from your next interview is at 2 o'clock at this place. We do nothing for you. When actually what the candidates are showing us from their work is, once they've applied, we want to increase the information that is available to you about process, what's happening, and we have to watch our language. Something I've really observed at this conference, I thought it was really something that really stood out to me, and it's something for people to think about, is I've seen some great speakers today. But most of the speakers that I've seen today, whenever we've talked about a hiring manager or a successful candidate, we've referred to them as he. He will do this, he will do that. And sometimes when that kind of language or terminology creeps into the way that we speak, what message does that send to our candidate base about what we are? So we have to think about very tailored messaging and using the digital opportunity to create not one big funnel for everyone, but funnels around job families, where people look at jobs on a very local basis. The images, content that they see are related to that job. Because what we've learned is actually stories are not that important, right? EVP, employee value proposition, is kind of a crazy idea. The idea of employee value proposition is that every single person who works for this company for exactly the same reason. Exactly the same, 4 or 5 reasons. That's why they're here. And yet when we talk to people, they all have different reasons for working for a company, for being at a place, but it's individual. So it's not about us delivering an employee value proposition, but delivering an individual value proposition by creating the opportunity for chat. How do we do that? We work on our sourcing and top of the funnel. So we are very targeted on who we invite to apply for what opportunity, and we base that on data. We can automate this whole process, 80% of what we're doing, which is the outreach. Most of our candidates, actually, we already know. Most of your organisations have already reached the talent tipping point. The people who you should hire will either work for you as employees, have previously worked for you as alumni, have applied for you before, because if 90% are getting rejected, and 70% of the people we're looking at being rejected, we're actually saying, we could have hired any one of them, it's just someone was stronger or did a better job or was different in the process. We keep those people in mind. We already know the people we want to hire and we already know about them. We can target them in a very targeted way to say, here is the message, here is the opportunity. This job, let's not talk to you about a company, let's talk to you about this job, this opportunity, these are the people. And what keeps people connected with you? What makes it work when they're not looking for a job? Learning and development content. Because people are changing jobs at a much more frequent period, that tells us two things from the data. Number one is, if your headcount doesn't grow in your organisation next year, you will still have to hire more people. The number of opportunities that come up, if people leave at short frequencies, you will do more hiring next year than you did this year, unless something strange happens in your organisation, right? So you will definitely have to hire more people, and your TA team probably won't get any bigger. So you're going to have to figure out how you're going to do that on the same or smaller budget, right? That's the challenge that we face. The way we do it is looking at it and saying, what can we automate? We can automate, and this is what we do. First thing is we look at workflow. In a workflow, there are about 73 tasks that have to happen for somebody to be hired. A task can be simple as an email out, the number of tasks to schedule a room, book a room, get people in the right place. We can automate all of that using schedule tools, mailing tools, all that kind of stuff. We can automate that straight away. So we can take about 80% of the workflow out immediately. The scheduling, the getting feedback, all that kind of stuff could all be done in an automated way. Then we look at, can we automate decision making? And there's two different types of decisions you make. One of them is a lateral decision. That's where you make a yes-no based on a criteria. We might think it's gut feel, but gut feel is really a human algorithm. It's a human decision based on certain factors like our experience, our knowledge. So yes, no decisions, or pass, fail, we have an assessment, we can automate that and put that in the process. And then other human decisions which require more inputs and more thought, we machine learn. By the way, there is no AI in Recruit at the moment. There's no artificial intelligence. There's fantastic machine learning and recommendation. That's the tools that we're looking at. Learning patterns of decision making, making sure we have enough clean and diverse data to make decisions where we need to. So look at your workflow. What tasks can we automate to make it easier for the candidate, so it's push, very easy? How do we tailor the communication and messaging so we're increasing our outreach rather than decreasing it? This is what recruiters tell me. They were all over me, but then they were all over me and then they fell down. And think about this. It's not your story that's important. It's the teller. Who do people believe? They don't want to hear from recruiters. They want to hear from peers, people who do the job. How do you create that opportunity? Because it's personal, and you need to automate that funnel around that job, the personal opportunity. Lots of things like chatbots give you the opportunity to do that based on learning digital preferences, digital behaviors, and all that kind of thing. It's personal. So automation is the key to simplify your process. Forget about AI for now. Automate all the tasks that you can and give the time back to talent acquisition. Give us time back so we're working above the funnel and at the bottom of the funnel rather than what we're doing right now, which is admin. Best paid administrators, chasing CVs, trying to get feedback. Let's automate all that stuff. Because when we do that and we understand that our brand has moved, it is about job brand, not employer brand, we can be successful. I've got a couple of minutes for questions. So does anyone have any questions you want to ask? Anything that wasn't clear? Stunned silence. Anything for anyone? Yes? Interesting, I like that. I'll take that.
Yeah, thank you. A lot went over my head, but still I think it was good. The quick question, the thing that I want to know was, see, you spoke about trying to individualize user experiences, the job descriptions, and the value proposition to the people, right? To the target audience, the digital audience, so to speak. How do you do this to scale?
So the way you do this at scale, first of all, is use data. So the probable sources of where you're going to be sourcing from will be people that you know. You already have the data. They've applied to you before, they've worked for you before, they work for you now. So your data, or it's a CV database that you're using, whichever, or LinkedIn, but you're using a fixed source of data. So If you can look at it and you're using some sourcing technology, it will select people for a reason, and that reason can personalize the message. Equally, you need to look, if you look at funnels rather than one big funnel, you can start to break that funnel down into job and skill families to say, if you apply for this job, we increase the content flow. The way in which we're delivering that at the moment in successful organizations through chatbots. Where we're using chatbots, the feedback that we're getting, the net promoter score from candidates is 8 times higher. They prefer talking to a chatbot than a human. So, and if we look at your digital behavior, if we made available to you video and a blog and a picture, and the thing that triggered your action was a picture, we're going to send you more pictures, no more videos. If you respond to video, we're just going to send you video. If you do that in SMS, we're going to SMS you. If you do it by email, we're going to email you. We're making it, and this isn't new stuff, right? This is very simple e-commerce. The retailers do this every day of the week. So if I'm looking for how do I build a career site, how do I build an experience, it's going to have to be digital, but I already know about you. I don't need to ask you for information. I can personalize your experience. Something like if I look at if I look at your location, the pictures I can show you will be of our local location. I won't show you a site from New York for a job in Delhi. You don't want to see that. You want to see people who look and feel like you. And if you're applying for a technical job, you want to know a bit of technical information. You don't want to know all the information. So if I look at who you are and where you're coming from, I can tailor that funnel into the information we're giving you. Also, if I'm using a chatbot, we can have continuous conversations when you want it without the need for there to be a human live in that process. It's probably going to be a linear conversation. Things like frequently asked questions on job discovery. The place you start, if you want to use chatbots, the place you start is you figure out the answers before you figure out the question. And you're very clear that it's automated and it's a linear, yes, no, what are you interested in? But we're building funnels which personalize and ask you for the information that you want rather than trying to say, here's one size fits all. Does that answer that?
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
One more. And we have to close. I was told Indian Standard Time was always late, but I was kind of maybe wrong about that. So, thank you very much, everyone. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to be around. I'm very easy to connect with online, Facebook, LinkedIn. Don't phone me because I don't know my phone number. It's always digital now. But come find me. Anyone's got any questions later, I'm here for the dinner. Love to talk to you. Thank you, everybody.